product marketing case study, we're going to look at key lights for content creators. Key lights are basically the main light that you would use for filming, and content creators are people like YouTubers, game streamers, and other types of influencers. There are three main competitors that we're going to look at. The market leader, which is Elgato, contender, Logitech, and lastly, we have Godox. And we're looking at three specific products. So with Elgato, we're looking at their product called Keylight. With Logitech, we're looking at the Litra Beam. And with Godox, we're looking at a product called the ES45. Now, to validate what I was thinking about who the market leader is, who the contender is, and who is one of the third place products, I used Google Trends, so we can see here quite clearly that Elgato Keylight gets a lot more traffic than Logitech Litra Beam, and a lot more traffic than the Godox EX45. This is just one way that you could validate who the market leader is and is not. Now, the first thing I'm going to look at here is sustainable competitive advantages, which basically boils down to, do they have customer captivity? And do they have economies of scale? Or in some niche cases, it's going to be things like special licenses or some sort of government protection. Now, on the customer captivity side, we have the company Elgato, which has their own ecosystem. And a key part of that ecosystem is something called the Stream Deck, which is a device for controlling various things, software and hardware, when you're doing a live stream. So that's one of the things that locks people into the Elgato ecosystem and prevents them or deters them from buying products from competing brands. Logitech also has their own ecosystem through software such as the G Hub, and just the fact that you're familiar with using the many other Logitech peripherals would give you some sort of stickiness in their ecosystem. Next, on economies of scale, I would say the biggest factor here is Logitech, their brand marketing. So every time Logitech puts money into promoting their brand through PR, through advertising, there's going to be some spillover, some benefit to the specific product we're talking about, which is called the Litra Beam. Now, we see Godox has 4 different factories, so probably on the operational side, there's going to be a lot of economies of scale there, but that's also going to be true with the other 2 companies we're looking at. And all of them are going to benefit from some sort of reputation spillover from other products that they make, such as their webcams, microphones, etc. So investments in marketing in each of those will have some sort of peripheral benefit to these specific key lights that we're talking about. Now, we're going to go through some of the product details and positioning for these specific products. And 2 of the main takeaways that I want you to get from this is that product awareness often trumps the best product. So just the fact that your product is more known is going to mean it's more successful, even if it's largely deficient. And that's certainly the case with this specific case study. The other thing is that broad positioning is often superior, largely because of the benefits of awareness. The other big benefit of broad awareness, of broad positioning, is that you're not alienating certain buyers from buying your product, especially large segments. So let's go through this. Now, with the Elgato product, there are a lot of deficiencies. There are no physical controls, so you cannot adjust the brightness, for example, or the coolness using a physical dial or button. Complicated setup, lots of connectivity problems. It's the most expensive out of the 3. It has no remote control. It doesn't work on enterprise networks, so there are all sorts of issues with this. With Logitech's Litra Beam, the main deficiency of this is it's just not bright enough. Content creators who are being targeted in all these cases are in especially strong need of having a bright light, and Logitech just doesn't provide that. It does not connect to the Stream Deck, so that's one of the important ecosystems that these content creators are going to want, and it has no remote. And then we go down to Godox. It doesn't connect to the Stream Deck, and one of the big deficiencies here is just little brand value, little awareness. There's not that psychological benefit of I'm buying from a brand that I know and trust, so I feel better about buying it. Out of all of these, I would say that the best product and the one that has the fewest deficiencies is actually Godox, but this is the one that has the lowest market share. And the one with the most deficiencies, I would say, is Elgato. Now, Logitech could have stepped in here and overcame a lot of the issues that Elgato had, but because they didn't provide one of the key benefits or key features that people want, which is the brightness, it's a very deficient product. But in spite of all of that, the simple product awareness of Elgato makes it the top seller. And then Logitech's brand awareness is also going to help them generate a lot of sales, whereas the best product here is ultimately losing because nobody's ever heard of it. It's just not even being talked about at all. So the fact that it's a superior product is irrelevant. It's not even in the consideration set. Now, let's move on to positioning. And here we see a different story. We see here that Elgato, I would say, actually has the best positioning of the three, despite having arguably one of the worst products. So their positioning is basically, this is a key light for creators. And then they elaborate on this in various places like Amazon, and they say, oh, this is for streaming, this is for recording, this is for video conferences. They're not pegging themselves into a very narrow niche, which is what a lot of product marketing managers are very tempted to do. Let's alienate as many different segments as possible, only focus on one. And when you do that, often you just end up with very small sales. So they really broadened it. And I'll show you later how they went even broader over time. And they're just saying key light for creators. Notice they're not saying just for YouTubers. They're not saying this is just for game streamers or game broadcasters. It's somewhat broad. Now, when we go down to Logitech, they're saying, okay, this is a premium LED streaming light. So here they're saying that it's specifically for streaming, but a lot of content creators are not streaming. They're just recording videos and uploading it to YouTube, or recording videos, uploading it to Facebook, social media, etc. So I think it's a bit too narrow. Why do you have to go that narrow? I don't think you need to in this case. And we go down to Godox, and they have the worst positioning of all three. They're saying they have an LED light just for esports. And that's a bit bizarre to me, because if you have an LED light that's good for esports, then it's also going to be good for all types of content creation. At least go as broad as streaming. So they've kind of pegged themselves into a little niche there. And you might think, okay, well, if I just focus on one little narrow market, then I will just dominate that. But that's not really the case. People tend to think in broader terms than that. I mean, you'd like if they just think in terms of niches, but people are just like, I need a good light to work with my webcam or work with my content. So what's the best light for that? So I want to dive more deeply here into the positioning. So when we use the word streamers, well, what about people who just record? That's a huge part of the market that you're alienating. Esports, well, what about educators? What about product reviewers? What about animators? What about the million different permutations of content creators that are out there? And even the word key light, I think, is a poor choice. And I would like to see Elgato even get rid of that term, because a lot of the people that you're selling to, if they're buying a key light, this is probably the first light that they're buying, or the first semi-professional light that they're buying. So if they're not a professional, they probably don't even know what that word means, key light. Why not just say, this is a light for content creators, or this is a light for your digital videos, something like that. But we do see here that Elgato has been moving in the right direction, in my opinion, which is going with broader positioning. You can see in their brand, they used to have the word gaming. They've gotten rid of that because a lot of the market potential here is not people in gaming. It's just general content creators, people that are working from home, etc. You can also see when they first announced this specific product, they were positioning it as for Twitch streamers and YouTube creators, but there are all sorts of content creators that are not going to be on Twitch and YouTube. They're going to be on Instagram. They're going to be on Facebook, etc. And then they've switched to a more broader, the key light creators love. Now, the other key lesson I want you to look at with this is thinking of the target market, not just in terms of the target buyer, but in terms of the context of what's happening in that market. And one of the biggest things that's happening is just an explosion in growth, not just because of things like COVID, but just because there are tons of more people who want to be influencers, who want to create content. And what that's going to do is it's going to attract a lot of competition. And we see this video here with 59,000 views. Logitech is coming for Elgato. So Elgato has held this position as the leader in the key light for content creators, but seeing that growth, seeing that big potential, the market's growing, so that means competitors are going to enter, and hopefully that more competition is going to help these companies overcome the deficiencies in their product. They're also going to be forced to go perhaps with better positioning. They're going to have to focus more on getting broader, wider product awareness. And the other thing is that the growing market isn't necessarily good for a business like Elgato because it's going to attract more competition, and the barriers to entry are going to become a little less secure.